So the next panel will be moderated by Greg Dodson. He's from the UO Law School. Greg teaches climate change and law and policy and leads the Energy Law and Policy Project at UO. He's going to moderate the session, so welcome.
Thank you, Francis. My name is Greg Dodson. I'm with the University of Oregon School of Law, and it's a pleasure to be with you today. I want to begin by thanking the Oregon Coastal Caucus and the Confederated Tribes of the Silex for hosting this wonderful event and inviting all of us to be here. In this panel, we're going to talk about what are some of the current effects of climate change that we're seeing in Oregon, what are some of the anticipated effects, and what can we do about it? And we have a really fabulous panel to help explore these issues. So I'm looking forward to a fascinating discussion. Before we get started, I'm just going to take a moment to introduce everyone here, and then we'll jump into a moderated conversation. We are joined by George Waldbusser, as Francis noted. He was featured in that excellent film you just saw. He is a professor of ocean ecology and biochemistry at Oregon State University College of Earth, Ocean, and Atmospheric Sciences. He's sitting here immediately to my left. We're also very lucky to have Chad Oliver sitting next to him. He's the Pinchot Professor of Forestry and Environmental Studies. He's the director of Yale University's Global Institute of Sustainable Forestry. We heard a reference earlier that someone has traveled as far as Washington, D.C. to be with us today. I think Chad actually takes the prize because he came here from Istanbul. So thank you, Chad, for making that journey. Sitting next to Chad is Ethan Elkind. He is with the University of California, Berkeley, and UCLA Schools of Law. He's the Climate Program and Business Research Initiative Director there. Thank you, Ethan, for being here. We're looking forward to the conversation. And we're very lucky to have Kristen Sheeran, who is the Climate and Energy Policy Advisor to Governor Kate Brown. Thank you, Kristen, for joining us as well. All of our panelists have fascinating backgrounds with deep experience in all of these issues, and my brief introduction doesn't do them justice. I encourage you to take a look at their more extensive backgrounds that are either available on the app or in the brochures that you have. So there's really no question, as we've heard other people say today, that as carbon emissions have increased, we are seeing some serious consequences of that over the years. And the video we just saw explored one very serious impact of those carbon emissions, ocean acidification. And we're going to continue that conversation in just a moment. Before we do, the other serious effect of carbon emissions is climate change. And experts tell us that we are now seeing the effects of climate change on every continent, obviously including here in Oregon, and the consequences are, potentially very serious. Not the least of those impacts are to our forests. We've heard a lot of concern about wildfires. It's on everyone's minds as we go outside and breathe in the particulate matter. So let's start off with you, Chad. You're obviously a leading expert on forestry issues, and what can you tell us about climate change and what it means for the forests of Oregon?
Let's see, can you hear me if I speak like this? Okay, thank you. First I'm going to talk about climate change and then the effect that has on forests. Now, first of all, for hundreds of millions of years, the climate has been fluctuating in a somewhat regular and predictable cycle. About every 10,000 years, the sun goes from concentrating its sunlight on the pole to concentrating its sunlight on the equator. And then it goes back to concentrating its sunlight on the pole. Now, when it concentrates its sunlight on the equator, the poles get so cold that they create glaciers that cover all of Canada and most of northern Europe. But it dries up the equator so much that such things happen as the Amazon turns into a grassland and most of the forests in Africa disappear. Now, this last happened about 18,000 years ago. Now, that seems a long time, but just wait a minute. Then, by 8,000 years ago, we had the opposite effect. The sunlight was concentrated on the North and South Pole, the glaciers melted, and the vegetation